Hi everyone! I got diagnosed with ADHD a year and a half ago, right before my 30th birthday, so I am one of the lucky people who got diagnosed as an adult. And when I went to start my assessment almost a year before that, I googled like the process of getting diagnosed and blah blah, and I didn't really find a lot of info or a lot of, helpful things, because I just really wanted to know a little bit about what to expect, because I had no idea. My ADHD was never picked up in school, I was never assessed, no one ever suspected I might be neurodivergent, so I hadn't really been in that system before. I hadn't, even talked to a psychiatrist, I'm pretty sure. So I really had no idea what to expect, and I just wanted to feel a little bit reassured, but I didn't really find much. So here you go. For anyone who is curious about what the process can look like. Obviously, it will probably be different for a lot of people, and also I live in Norway, so depending on where you live and how old you are and lots of different things, it will probably look a lot different for most people, but this is what it was like for me. I've said for a while that I was gonna make some videos about ADHD, and this might feel like I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I thought the most natural video to start with would be how I knew I had ADHD, and I will touch in on that a little bit, but I'm not gonna make that specific video because I've seen how those videos are received, and I don't really need strangers on the internet telling me that everyone feels that way. It's like that for everyone. Does everyone have ADHD? ADHD is a very broad diagnosis. People can have such different symptoms and such different lives and be affected in such different ways. And also a lot of people are walking around out there without a diagnosis when they really do have ADHD. But I'm just gonna say, I knew from a young age that the word I didn't know then is neurodivergent. I knew back then that I was different, or that my brain worked in a different way than most of the people around me. And when I left school and started uni, that's when it became so obvious to me that it was ADHD. And I do not think my story is unique. I think this happens to a lot of people. But it would take me almost 10 years to actually do something about it, which I would just advise you, if you feel ready, just do it. Like, start your assessment. Do it early. Like, just do it. What are you waiting for? I don't know what I was waiting for, and I know I would have benefited from just getting it done earlier. So that story begins in March 2022. I went to my doctor, because you need to go to your doctor to get a referral to a psychiatrist, and for this doctor's visit, it's very much recommended that you write a list of all the things you're experiencing that you think are, ADHD symptoms. Mainly because it would have been really hard to remember all of these things if I hadn't written them down, because I have ADHD. So you basically just sit there and mention all of the things that make your life hard, or all of the things that are maybe essentially the worst things about yourself. Obviously not all my ADHD symptoms are bad, and I'm not saying ADHD is bad. I really felt like such a mess of a person just mentioning all of these things, like, yeah, I can't be anywhere on time, can't remember anything, just fucking lost all the time. But that put me on the waiting list for the psychiatric part of the hospital. I don't know what to call this department, and I googled it, and lots of things like psych ward and all of that, that's not correct. It's where the psychiatrists are. So in June 2022, I went there to meet with a specialist who did this basic talk with me, summed up my life briefly. I talked about my work life and my social life and all of that, just summed up all the areas of my life that I thought was affected, which obviously are all of them, but just summing up how this affects my daily life. And from that, he assessed whether this was worth, looking into or not. And obviously it was. So then I was assigned a psychiatrist, and I had my first appointment with him in July. And I just want to say this before anything else. If you don't vibe with your psychiatrist or any medical staff that you're assigned that's gonna be, looking after you for a while, of course, feel free to ask for someone else. I just want to say this because I know a lot of people do struggle with, especially therapists and psychiatrists and people that they're talking to for the most part. You should really feel seen and heard by this person. And oh my god, I loved my psychiatrist. We were so on the same wavelength. We really vibed together. I'm so lucky that it was just 100% match immediately. So in our first appointment, he gave me info on how you go about getting diagnosed, how the process is, because basically for ADHD, you need to rule out everything else, because so much, ADHD can be so much. But yeah, you need to rule out everything else, and then you get to ADHD at the end. At least that's how they do it there. Obviously, like I said in the beginning, I live in Norway, and also I think a lot of people do things differently. And my psychiatrist also said that if you're looking for just to get diagnosed and not to get this job actually done thoroughly, I'm sorry that you were assigned me because I'm gonna do this really thoroughly and make sure that you get the right diagnosis and not just the diagnosis that you essentially want but like think that you have, because I went into it really sure that I had ADHD. I had a lot of years to think about this, but I'm obviously not a professional, so I don't know. And like I said, also, like, a lot of things can be confused with ADHD. A lot of people question why I would even bother getting diagnosed. My main reasons for it were that I wanted to try medication, and also I just wanted the validation of there being a reason to why some things are harder for me than for other people. And just to say this, I don't feel bad about myself for having ADHD. I don't think it's a bad thing. I live with it. Sometimes it's very frustrating, but it's fine. And without my ADHD, who knows who I would be, you know? I have a whole bunch of notes, by the way, if you're wondering how I'm able to remember this. Of course I had to write it down. I went through my whole like medical journal to just make sure I got everything in the right order and all of that, because I don't remember this. My psychiatrist also told me that the assessment is expected to take 6 weeks. And as you probably hear from the story, you can tell this took a little bit longer than 6 weeks. Oh, the joys of being a woman. There's little research done in ADHD in women, and it also often presents itself differently. So if you are a female, you might just, you know, need to prepare yourself that it could take a little bit longer than expected. So for the assessment, you go through your whole life, from like the pregnancy when you were just a fetus, and through, you know, school and your social life and work life and all of those things. You go through your whole life just to pick up, like, is there anything that happened? Is there any trauma? Is there anything that, you know, changed the course of your life, or maybe the course of your brain? I don't know. Just, is there any like significant things here, or a significant time period where things just changed? But for me, I feel like my brain has been very consistent. Before each appointment as well, I was sent these different surveys that I would fill out. So it's about how you're feeling that day, and also about anxiety or dark thoughts, or if you're feeling, you know, worried or feeling suicidal, or all of these things that you fill out. There's like up to 4 forms that I would fill out every time. I think this is pretty standard for going in to see psychiatrists, but it's a good way for them to just track, you know, how you're doing and if there's a lot of fluctuation. And then I guess this was after my first or my early appointments, there was a note in my journal that said my psychiatrist met with other specialists and psychiatrists about starting my ADHD assessment. I mean, everyone agreed. And then I just did this WACE test to just check out my focus and my hyperactiveness. And it's different, like, I don't know, basically IQ tests. I don't know. Don't take my word for anything I'm saying. I am not a professional. I am just, you know, retelling the story from freaking 2 years ago. But this is just to see where I'm at with like my skills and abilities and all of that. I scored well on the tests. The lowest result was on the tasks where I had to remember information for later use. Not surprising to me. Then my psychiatrist had another meeting with, you know, specialists and psychiatrists, and they all agreed he should continue assessing me for ADHD. And then, lucky me, I got to do the CPT-3 test. If you have never done this, you're so freaking lucky. It stands for Connor's Continuous Performance Task 3rd. Basically, you sit in front of a computer for 20 minutes, different letters will appear on the screen, and you press spacebar every single time a letter appears that isn't the letter X. So, does anyone want to ask what the longest 20 minutes of my life was? I'm just kidding. In this test, I actually did well, and there was no real indication that I struggled to stay focused. So my psychiatrist considered referring me to a different hospital in a different town that can do more like thorough testing. He also needed to get some information from other people that know me and that have known me for a long time. So he called my elementary school teacher. She was my teacher for 7 years. So she had a pretty, you know, long stretch of time with me. She said that I was a good student, basically. She said that there wasn't really anything out of the ordinary, but I was easily distracted, I was scatterbrained, and I sometimes would need to hear information twice. And that is still a thing. I don't always pick up information super fast. At some point, he also met with my mom to just talk about my life and all of that. And also, like, apparently it took so long that he needed 2 appointments with her. My mom wasn't really my first choice for this. It was just the easiest to have her do it because she is a boomer. She's scared of diagnoses. She thinks that, oh my God, if you get diagnosed with ADHD, that's gonna ruin your life. And she also she doesn't want me to have ADHD, so she didn't believe it. So she didn't really support it, but I think, you know, getting diagnosed for something is getting more normalized and it's not as scary anymore. I'm not trying to make her sound like a bad person. She just, this was very unfamiliar to her, so she did struggle a little bit to, you know, get used to the thought. But I think for a lot of people, there's the stereotype about what ADHD is, and if you don't actually represent that, they don't think you have ADHD. So it's a whole thing. So he had another meeting with the specialists and psychiatrists, and they decided it's a good idea to get a referral to that other hospital for the more advanced testing. And obviously I am having appointments in between this, so I'm seeing my psychiatrist like every week or whatever. So it's not like I'm not, you know, continuously seeing him, but I'm just trying to sum this up in a bit of a tidy way. Anyway, I get my first appointment at the other hospital. I went there and I went to the wrong hospital. I went to the hospital that's not the like psychiatric hospital. I went to the, I don't know, regular hospital. So I was 15 minutes late, and I do feel this counted towards my case because it kind of showed what I'm like in daily life. Before this appointment, I was asked to get my hearing and my vision tested, and that's actually when I realized I needed glasses, because I went to get my vision tested and I needed glasses. I never got around to getting my hearing tested, which also shows how chaotic I am. So when I was at this hospital, I got a lot of tests done. I felt a little bit like a monkey. It was all about like putting things into categories, memorizing stuff, memorizing orders, like systems, words, and all of these things. And I went back there for a second appointment to get more testing done, and it was about like flexible problem solving, cognition, memorizing, all of these different things that you probably never thought you would get tested on. So in late November 2022, my psychiatrist told me that all their findings and all the results support an ADHD diagnosis. They have found no other explanation for the issues I'm experiencing, and I just felt so relieved. Like finally all the problems I've experienced like in school and work in my life in general, suddenly they were explained. He then discussed it with a specialist and my diagnosis was official. I messaged my friends and told them, because I was obviously really happy to get it, and they were like, oh, congrats, but like, do we say congrats? Like, is this a good thing? You know, they were kind of confused, but I was obviously just so happy to have my diagnosis and just be validated, you know? And then I was offered to attend this course that was set up to, you know, teach people about how to live with ADHD and just any kind of like support that you can have and all of that, and support that the government provides and stuff like that. And it was so good, but I only went to one session because it ran over 8 weeks, and it was like at least 3 hours every week for 1 day a week. And I found this very problematic. I'm a journalist, so for me to have to block off like 3 hours every Tuesday for 8 weeks to, you know, be unavailable for that time, I found that very difficult. My manager was supportive of me attending this, but I just found it too difficult to miss that much work because it would make it harder to structure my work week. So that was a big bummer because I really enjoyed the course and just meeting other people with ADHD, because I don't know a lot of people with ADHD, and just meeting, like being in a room with other people who faced like obviously not the exact same issues as me, but who could understand me. That was amazing. I really enjoyed going, and maybe I will get the chance again in the future. So the obvious next step here, if you're paying attention, I mentioned that one of the main reasons I wanted to get assessed was to start medication. So that is obviously the next step here. I meant to post this video so much earlier because this time last year I was testing out medicine, and I recorded myself in the first few weeks and stuff like that. And I'll post that video next Saturday because I think it'll be a little bit too much to cram into here. We don't need to say it all today. But yeah, to sum it up, it took me almost a year to get diagnosed. It was a lot, you know, a lot of appointments, a lot of tests and talking and telling people about yourself. It is a lot to go through, but for me, it's so worth it. I have a diagnosis now. It doesn't affect, you know, me as a person that I have a diagnosis. Like, you can't be discriminated against or anything. But I know that I'm not just, oh, I'm just a scatterbrained person who can't do anything right, or I can't remember anything and I can't turn up on time and all of that. There's actually a reason for these things. I know that I am different than a lot of my friends. A lot of things are more difficult for me than for the people around me, and I know there's a reason for that. And getting diagnosed provided such a validation and relief for me. I know it was right for me to get diagnosed. And even though it was a lot to go through, I have been really lucky with the staff I've met on the way. So I've had it, you know, easier than it could have been. I'm sure. I'm sure it can be a very exhausting and just demanding process. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it would have been harder if I didn't have, you know, good medical staff. If you feel like you want to get diagnosed, or that would maybe help you or make your life easier, or just, I don't know, if that feels right for you, I would definitely recommend doing it. Just be prepared that it's probably going to be a little bit hard, but most likely you will be good taken care of, and it could really provide, you know, a relief in your life. So yeah, I would definitely recommend getting diagnosed if you feel like it, if it's something you've been thinking about for maybe years. People were asking me why I even bothered, you know, getting diagnosed when I was 29, but I don't regret it for a second. It's honestly improved my life. No doubt about it. All right, let's just finish this video. I don't have anything more to say today. I hope it provided some sort of support for anyone who's maybe in the situation. And if you're just curious about how you can go about getting diagnosed and all of that and what the process can look like, then here you go. Thank you so much for watching. That really means a lot to me. And I shall see you later.